So I hear that you are a conservative.
Yes, I am. I believe in the Constitution, capitalism, and personal responsibility. I hear that you are a liberal.
Yes, I am a liberal, but we like to call ourselves progressives now because it doesn't sound as moralless. I believe that all of the world's problems can be solved with a hug and butterfly kisses. Had we only sent Osama bin Laden a box of homemade sugar cookies with sprinkles, then the war would not have been necessary. I believe that liberal presidents, Congress members, and justices should have the power to interpret the Constitution in a way that is convenient for them, even if it is violated or completely taken out of the context of which it was originally written. I believe that capitalism is bad because it rewards the efforts of hardworking Americans and punishes lazy Americans. I believe that regardless of the poor decisions that people make, they should be entitled to reap the benefits of others' hard work.
Okay, none of what you said makes any sense. Why is it okay for liberals to ignore the Constitution or wildly interpret it?
Because it is the nice thing to do. For example, if the President, Congress, and justices would not have ignored the Constitution, then the government would not have been able to force socialized health care that costs trillions and saves millions.
But didn't the majority Americans say that they didn't want socialized health care that will compete with and cripple the private healthcare industry? Didn't a federal judge rule that the Constitution did not give the federal government the authority to force people to purchase insurance? So how is this okay?
Because it is the nice thing to do.
Do you understand that the United States currently has the best healthcare available? Do you understand that it is impossible to compete with the government because it has unlimited funds and no real budget constraints, much unlike the companies that it will be competing with? Do you understand that our Constitution has made the United States the most powerful nation on earth, and that it guarantees the opportunity of achieving the American dream for those that work hard? Again, how is this okay?
Because it is the nice thing to do.
Wow, you really don't get it. People like you are wrecking my country because you think it is the nice thing to do. Your mother really should have sought medical attention for you after she dropped you on your head when you were a baby. Let's move on because this is going nowhere. Let's talk about personal responsibility. Shouldn't people be responsible for their own actions?
No, that is silly. It is always someone else's fault.
Huh? What about a criminal that robs someone?
Well, you obviously don't understand criminology. If that person happened to grow up in an economically disadvantaged area, then the middle class and rich families are to blame for the criminal's actions because the criminal was deprived of important material possessions as a child and did not have the same opportunities to grow up to be a successful adult.
So because the child's parents likely had multiple children out of wedlock that he and she could not afford, and because they could not afford to buy the child an Xbox, it means that the child had no other choice than to grow up to be a criminal?
Sure, don't forget that the child did not have the same opportunities for success as the children from more affluent families.
But doesn't the same school bus that picks up the more affluent children pick up the economically deprived students at the expense of the more affluent parents that pay taxes? Don't the children sit in the same classes? Aren't the children provided the same books? Isn't true that more affluent children have parents that are more likely to get involved in their child's education? Isn't it true that many urban areas receive federal grants to provide after-school daycare and educational programs aimed at the economically disadvantaged? Isn't it true that grants are available to college students that are low-income earners and have parents that are low-income earners? Isn't it true that federal student loans are available to all people that are not in arrears for past student loans or felons? Isn't it true that many scholarships are available to only minorities that are considered perpetually discriminated against, even though it excludes poor white students that could equally benefit from such scholarships? So exactly what educational opportunities are non-existent for economically deprived students? I don't understand. There are many people that live in poverty as children, but they take advantage of America's educational system and stay out of jails. So how is it someone else's fault?
I don't want to talk about this anymore. You are a greedy racist.
But I never said that I thought my race was superior to any other race. And I pay for economically deprived students' education through my taxes, so how am I greedy? Besides, isn't it the parents' fault that they are growing up in poverty?
Of course it's not the parents' fault.
But aren't a vast majority of economically deprived children born into single-parent households of which the other parent spends a significant amount of time behind bars and does not adequately contribute financially to the child's expenses? Isn't it true that these parents rarely have a post-secondary education or any viable vocational skills that would support a family with multiple children? Isn't it true that despite having children that they already can't afford, that they continue to have more children at the taxpayer's expense? Shouldn't these parents use contraceptives or practice abstinence until they can adequately provide for the family that they have, like many other responsible parents?
That is mean and cruel. You have no business telling people that they should not have children.
But it is not mean and cruel to tell people that they should take steps to ensure that they can properly provide for their children. Isn't it more mean to have children that you know you can't afford and force them to grow up in poverty? Isn't it mean to force taxpayers to support your family? By God, if I am paying the rent, electricity bill, cable bill, gas bill, sewer bill, grocery bill, clothing bill, car bill, insurance bill, cigarette bill, alcohol bill, a night at the club bill, then it is my business. Perhaps if they could keep their legs out of the air and on the ground long enough, then they would be able to do something productive with their lives.
Another terrible factor that contributes to the criminality of children are areas that these children grow up in. These areas are often dirty and covered in trash and graffiti. These are high-crime areas. This contributes to the delinquency of children. Middle-class and rich families should pay more money to improve these conditions. The children should not have to live in these conditions.
The children should not have to live in these conditions. Perhaps if the government would force the children's welfare-receiving parents to take the jobs of illegal immigrants, then the family would have more money. Perhaps if those parents would get off of their butts off of the couch and turn Jerry Springer and Maury Povich off long enough, then they could clean up their own communities. Perhaps if the parents would have completed a college degree or learned a needed job skill before having 4 children, then they would not have to live in the ghettos. If the parent is not going to work, then perhaps he or she should keep an eye on their own children to make sure that gangs aren't raising them. Maybe the problem is really simple. Maybe the problem is that people should wait until they can afford children before they have 4 of them. I'm tired of giving my money away for this nonsense.
You are mean. You should want to give to others.
I do give to others. Have you heard anything that I've said? The government routinely takes my hard-earned money and redistributes it to people that chronically make bad decisions. I have to participate in this irrational reward system whether I want to or not. You like for me to give all of my hard-earned money away for socialist causes. How about you? Do you give all of your disposable income away to needy families?
My money? Let's talk about something else.
So then what is wrong with capitalism?
Capitalism is bad because it does not ensure that all people enjoy the same high quality of life.
But capitalism is what made this country the leading world power. It is what caused people to leave countries that allegedly uniformly provide its citizens all of their necessities. How many Americans do you know that have fled to Cuba? That's right, none. The Soviet Union used to provide its people with necessities, and so did China. Many people lived in poverty and starved. Modern conveniences and amenities were unheard of in those countries because you got what the country deemed was necessary, what they issued you. You could not choose your vocation because the government did that too. Those people were miserable and desperately wanted capitalism. Those countries did not begin to prosper until they incorporated capitalism into their economic structures. Besides, none of those people had a high quality of life before capitalism. They were all equally miserable except the government leaders.
Well, it would be the nice thing to do.
You really think that the government taking away our freedom to make our own choices would be the nice thing to do? This would mean that they could tell you to be a doctor and go through many years of tedious schooling only to make as much as the waitress that you live next to in the same run-down crummy apartment building. Would you want to go to school for over 10 years only to be paid as much as someone with no post-secondary education?
Let's talk about something else.
That's what I thought. You ignorant slut. If I were not a gentleman, I would pimp slap you in such a way that Ike Turner would be proud and seeking technique advice. I would slap you so hard that your great-grandchildren would feel it. I would slap you so hard that you would be void of taste for weeks. But I won't, because I am a gentleman and I don't want to damage the few functioning brain cells that survived your past alcohol and substance abuse.